Why do people with ADHD experience more burnout? The ADHD brain is wired to chase novelty and thrives on the adrenaline of urgency. This can create moments of intense focus and productivity that feel almost superhuman. But the same drive that fuels these bursts of energy can also lead to a rapid crash. When you're constantly operating at high speed, it's easy to burn through your mental and physical reserves without realizing it. This cycle of jumping into action and then feeling completely drained becomes a repeating pattern that's hard to break. Energy management for someone with ADHD isn't as straightforward as taking breaks or following a schedule. The impulsive nature of the ADHD brain often overrides the need for balance, pulling you into activities that feel exciting or immediately rewarding. It's not uncommon to hyper-focus on a task for hours, forgetting to eat, hydrate, or even rest, only to crash when your body and mind finally catch up to the effort you've expended. The exhaustion that follows doesn't just feel physical, it's mental and emotional, leaving you in a fog where even small decisions feel overwhelming. This constant push and pull creates a fragile balance. On the one hand, you might feel motivated and driven, and on the other, the lack of consistent energy makes it difficult to sustain that momentum. Without structure, the ADHD brain often stays in a state of overstimulation, jumping from one task to another or struggling to shift out of a cycle of procrastination. Even when you're not actively working on something, your mind might still be racing, constantly thinking about what needs to be done next. This mental overstimulation can be just as draining as physical activity. The problem is compounded by the way the ADHD brain processes dopamine, the chemical responsible for feelings of reward and satisfaction. Activities that aren't stimulating enough or don't offer an immediate payoff often feel unbearable, leading to procrastination or avoidance. But when you finally engage with a task, it can quickly consume all your attention and energy, leaving little room for recovery. This imbalance creates a perfect storm for burnout because there's no built-in mechanism to pause and recharge before the next cycle begins. At the same time, managing rest is equally tricky. Resting doesn't always feel restful for someone with ADHD. Sitting still or try to relax might make you feel restless or anxious, as if you're wasting time. The guilt of not being productive can creep in, making it hard to truly disconnect and recover. Over time, this lack of meaningful rest only deepens the exhaustion, turning it into a chronic state. When you combine these patterns with the demands of daily life, the result is a system that's constantly overstressed. Whether it's work, school, or personal commitments, the ADHD brain often feels like it's running on a treadmill that doesn't stop. Without strategies to manage energy levels, burnout becomes almost inevitable, leaving you stuck in a cycle that feels impossible to escape. Burnout with ADHD isn't just about being exhausted. It's like hitting a wall where everything feels too much and yet not enough at the same time. You might wake up knowing there's a long list of things you need to do, but even starting seems impossible. The simplest tasks like replying to a message or getting dressed can feel like climbing a mountain. It's not just physical tiredness. It's mental and emotional depletion that leaves you stuck in a loop of frustration and helplessness. There's often an overwhelming sense of failure that comes with this kind of burnout. You know you're capable of more, but no matter how much you push yourself, it feels like you're falling short. This gap between what you want to achieve and what you're actually able to do in the moment can lead to constant self-criticism. Thoughts like, "Why can't I just do this?" or "What's wrong with me?" become a running commentary in your mind, draining you even further. One of the hardest parts is the emotional numbness that often accompanies burnout. Instead of feeling motivated or inspired, there's a flatness, a sense that nothing really matters. It's not just that you don't want to do things. It's that you feel completely disconnected from them. Even activities that used to bring joy or excitement can feel like a chore, adding to the sense of frustration and confusion. You know you should care, but it feels like you're running on empty. This experience is intensified by the way ADHD affects your ability to regulate emotions and stress. When you're burned out, your threshold for frustration becomes much lower. Small challenges or setbacks can feel overwhelming, leading to outbursts of anger, tears, or a complete shutdown. It's as if your brain has no space left to process even the smallest inconvenience, making recovery feel just as daunting as trying to keep up with your responsibilities. The cycle of burnout with ADHD often feeds itself. The more you struggle to get things done, the more you criticize yourself, and the more energy you lose. It's not just about not being able to do something, it's about the constant mental weight of knowing you're not doing it. Even when you try to rest, guilt or anxiety about what you're not accomplishing makes it hard to truly recover. Over time, this cycle creates a sense of hopelessness, where every effort feels like swimming against the tide. Shame is a constant companion for many people with ADHD, especially when burnout sets in. The struggle to meet expectations at work, school, or home often feels like a losing battle. No matter how hard you try, deadlines are missed, tasks pile up, and the sense of falling behind becomes overwhelming. These moments aren't just frustrating, they leave a deep imprint, feeding the belief that you're somehow not good enough. This feeling of inadequacy doesn't just appear out of nowhere, it's shaped by the world around you. Society places a heavy emphasis on productivity, rewarding those who can push through and keep up with the pace. For someone with ADHD, this creates an impossible standard. You're not just working against your own challenges. You're constantly being compared to a system that isn't built for you. The pressure to perform and appear as though everything is under control can be suffocating. Even when you're struggling, the fear of being judged or misunderstood makes it hard to admit you need help or to take the time to recover. This shame isn't limited to what you feel about yourself. It's also reinforced by external expectations. You might hear things like, just try harder, why can't you focus? Or everyone else manages, why can't you? These comments, even when well-meaning, deepen the sense of failure. They reinforce the idea that ADHD is a weakness rather than a different way of thinking and functioning. Over time, the weight of these judgments adds to the exhaustion, making burnout even harder to escape. One of the most damaging effects of this shame is how isolating it can feel. You might start withdrawing from friends, family, or co-workers because you're afraid of being seen as lazy or unreliable. The more you try to hide your struggles, the more disconnected you feel, creating a cycle where the shame grows even stronger. Asking for help feels like admitting defeat, and taking time for yourself feels selfish, especially when the world around you seems to demand constant productivity. Shame also has a way of amplifying burnout. When you're already drained, the added mental load of guilt and self-doubt makes it even harder to recharge. Instead of focusing on recovery, you're stuck replaying your perceived failures over and over in your mind. It's a cruel paradox. The more you need rest and support, the harder it becomes to give yourself permission to take it. This constant internal battle keeps you trapped, leaving you feeling like you're falling further behind with no way to catch up. Breaking free from the ADHD burnout cycle doesn't require drastic overhauls. It starts with small, intentional changes that fit the way your brain works. One of the first shifts is rethinking rest, not as something you have to earn, but as a necessary part of functioning. Rest doesn't always mean doing nothing. It could be as simple as taking a few moments to breathe, going for a walk, or doing something that brings genuine enjoyment. The key is to give yourself permission to rest without guilt, knowing that recovery is not a luxury, but a priority. Another important change is learning to prioritize tasks in a way that feels manageable. Instead of trying to tackle everything at once, focus on what truly matters and let go of the rest, even if only temporarily. Breaking larger tasks into smaller, more approachable steps can make them feel less overwhelming. Using tools like timers, visual reminders, or checklists can also help keep your focus on track without adding pressure. These strategies aren't about forcing productivity. They're about creating a rhythm that works for you. Finding systems that align with how ADHD brains function can also make a big difference. This might mean experimenting with routines that are flexible rather than rigid, or creating external structures that compensate for internal struggles. For example, setting up recurring reminders for important tasks or organizing your space in a way that reduces decision fatigue can help conserve mental energy. It's not about trying to fix yourself. It's about finding tools that support you as you are. Compassion for yourself is essential throughout this process. Burnout often comes with a sense of failure, but progress isn't about perfection. It's about recognizing the small wins, completing one task, taking one break, or simply getting through the day. Treating yourself with kindness, even when things don't go as planned, builds resilience over time. It's a reminder that recovery doesn't happen all at once. It's a gradual process of rebuilding your energy and confidence. The most powerful shifts are often the smallest ones, repeated consistently. They might not feel significant in the moment, but over time, they create a foundation for better balance. You don't need to have everything figured out to start moving forward. All it takes is one small step, followed by another, and then another. Slowly, those steps begin to add up, making it possible to move out of burnout and into a space where you can thrive again.
If you enjoyed this video and want to see more content like this, we prepared the next video especially for you. Click here to watch.